Hello everyone, I'm Jim George, Director of Education for the Institute of Packaging Professionals, and welcome to today's webinar. IOPP would like to thank Healthcare Packaging Magazine, which is sponsoring today's webinar, and also IOPP's Medical Device Packaging Technical Committee, which is presenting this event. The Medical Device Committee is one of 10 technical committees of IOPP. Our speaker today is Greene. And she's a certified packaging professional and is on the board of directors of the Medical Device Packaging Technical Committee. She is also vice president of sales and technology at Life Packaging Technology, Inc. And today, Karen is going to talk about the steps involved in designing a package that meets the appropriate criteria for barrier packaging for medical devices. As part of her presentation, Karen will also share a case study to show how it works in action. During the course of the presentation, we invite you to please type your questions into the questions field on your screen and then submit them to us. And at the conclusion of Karen's presentation, we'll have a Q&A session and we'll get to as many of your questions as we can. So at this time, I'm going to turn things over to Greene.
Thanks, Jim. Welcome, everyone. Good morning and good afternoon, depending on your time zone. And thanks again to our sponsor, Healthcare Packaging. And I'm here today to represent IOPP's Medical Device Packaging Technical Committee. Wanted to give some recognition to our MDPTC officers. Our co-chairs are Allison Tyler of Beacon Converters and Russell Darley of Sealed Air Medical Packaging. Our vice chair is Brian Flynn of Sealed Air Medical Packaging. Our treasurer for our vast fortune is Jennifer Griffin with Medtronic. Our membership and secretary webmaster guru is Eric Carlson of Chain Analytics. Our program chair is Peter Schmidt of Montesino Associates. I am the task group chair, and our education co-chairs are Jennifer Nye Ben-Olken with St. Jude Medical and Jennifer Blocker of Sealed Air Medical. And our ombudsman is Charles Canizet with ATEC Medical. So shout out to those folks. They help make the Medical Device Packaging Technical Committee work. Okay, so as we mentioned, I'm here today representing the Medical Device Packaging Technical Committee, and just a little bit of brief background on who we are. We do provide a forum for the packaging professional in the medical device industry, and we hope to bring folks together to help solve some technical issues, help understand regulations, standards, and new technologies. So our vision statement, I won't read everything, but to really reiterate, we're here to help be a place to come for the latest information, a forum for the medical device packaging industry, and we're also working hard to provide tools and documents that help folks like you perform your tasks related to the package engineering function for medical devices. We work hard on exchanging non-proprietary information, and I always see a great amount of camaraderie amongst folks in this field, so it's great to be associated with them. We're also working towards really improving our ability, or our performance, I should say, as a liaison for technical and regulatory updates between organizations of mutual interest, such as AAMI, ISO, ASTM, ISTA, and the FDA. Our subcommittees, and this is really where a lot of the work gets done on the MDPTC. These are our committees that we have currently. What I'd like to present to you is that we can have as many or as few subcommittees as really the group desires. So I would encourage anybody in the audience, if you have an interest in a topic, there really are no significant credentials required. We just need somebody with an interest and the ability to do a little bit of work to lead these committees or to be a committee member. So feel free to email me, Karen@lifepacktech.com, if you are interested in either joining these committees, know more about them, or you want to start a subcommittee of your own. So our current active committees are labeling, led by Mr. Dave Olson of Advanced Web. Dave has a wealth of experience. I'm sure many of you know Dave, and he's brought some good information to us regarding labeling. In industry standards and regulatory liaison, Hal Miller of Pace Solutions, his consulting firm, and Allison Tyler. For education, we have Jennifer Nye-Benolkin and Jennifer Blocker. And probably the key deliverable that the two Jennifers have brought to the MDPPC is both a nurses survey and a nurses panel. And every year at HealthPAC, and this year our HealthPAC conference, a little shout out to HealthPAC, is going to be March 6th through 8th, 2012 in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And that is actually kind of the annual meeting of the Medical Device Packaging Technical Committee is at HealthPAC. Jennifer, the two Jennifers, bring us the results of a nurses survey, which they try to pull from throughout the year. And they also do a live nurses panel, which they bring together some local nurses, present them both some real and kind of contrived medical device packages. And we watch the nurses in action as they kind of open and critique these packages, providing us medical device packaging professionals with some valuable feedback on how that package is used and what maybe we can improve. So what I would like to ask folks today is we're looking for nurses in Europe or in Asia, for that matter, that could or would be willing to fill out a survey. And we've had the survey translated into many languages. So it could be your sister, your brother, your uncle, anybody that you know that is a nurse, especially outside the U.S., that could provide some feedback for us on a survey. We do have a subject matter expert in electrostatic discharge with Bob Vermillion of RMB Technology Group, and I actually was approached by a potential client recently that felt that they may have some static attraction problems with one of their packaging components. Sustainability is led by Daphne Allen of Pharmaceutical and Medical Packaging News, and Daphne is very active in researching and reporting on this topic. For sterilization as it relates to medical device packaging, we have Michael Tokarski of KCI Medical, and Combination Products, one of our sponsors here today, Healthcare Packaging. Jim Butchley, Jim leads that technical subcommittee. So our agenda today, the meat of our presentation, is I'm going to talk in as appropriate terms as possible regarding a medical device packaging case study that involved a medical device in which we were interested in determining the barrier properties shelf life of that particular package. So we'll focus on our challenge, we'll focus on the selected solution, how we went about addressing this problem through the use of targeted technologies and the focused development process. We'll go over a little bit of the lessons learned, and there's always plenty of highlights and lowlights in most projects. We can recap it and then answer any questions that you may have regarding the process that we went through. So this high barrier packaging project, this involves a surgical device composed of a high carbon steel. And as most of you know, anything that's non-stainless steel is highly corrosion prone. And I am not a metal stretch of the imagination, but just a little bit about the action of corrosion or rusting. It's really the oxidation of iron and its alloys, and the oxidation really occurs as an electrochemical process in the presence of water and oxygen. So we knew right away that we basically needed to provide a water and oxygen barrier to this high carbon steel product. This was a terminally sterilized medical device, going to be gamma irradiated. We were opting to comply with ISO 11607, packaging for terminally sterilized medical devices. Some of our package design inputs, and there are many more, but I'll kind of just glance across the top here, is that this particular component we wanted to place in a form-fill-seal flexible package design. We wanted to maintain a current form-fill-seal package configuration. Our manufacturer had significant investment in form-fill-seal technology with equipment and tooling, so we wanted to maintain that. We were looking at a printable top web surface for obvious reasons, both variable and constant information. And also the key piece here was we were looking to see if we could maintain a 5-year shelf life for both sterility and corrosion mitigation. So like any good medical device packaging engineer or anybody in the regulated industry, to ensure your safe and effective package design, you want to start with the regulations. So of course we look to guidance from ISO 11607, primarily Part 1. Part 2 is a little further down on process validation, and at the time I was engaged with the project, that wasn't our key focus. Also, we've indicated the quality system regulation for medical devices. We give a reference to that. So kind of the key question that we were presented with is, how do we determine barrier shelf life? We have tools for sterility shelf life, and I'm sure many in the audience are very familiar with ASTM F1980, which is a standard guide for accelerated aging of sterile barrier packaging systems. So we look to that guide and that and some of those best demonstrated practices to help kind of guide us along the process of looking at barrier shelf life, because there's a lot of important learnings and experience with that particular type of modeling for the change of physical properties. We looked at the mechanism of corrosion. I indicated here, basically an oxidation process in the presence of water and oxygen. And we did kick around the idea of to what extent should we pursue understanding that mechanism of corrosion. And what we determined, none of us were metallurgists, is that really the basic knowledge around the mechanism of corrosion seemed to be sufficient to at least understand what we needed to protect our product against. So we felt it wasn't getting us any to the point and game any faster to really heavily research corrosion. So we knew that current information pointed to humidity, moisture, and oxygen permeation as a carrier for moisture as kind of the key modes of corrosion. We also asked ourselves, if we measure the permeation rates of the package, how can we translate that permeation data into a corrosion shelf life? So a lot of questions. Okay, so what I have here, and I may toggle between this and a few other slides, is kind of a process map of our development process for this barrier package. So again, I'll try to highlight some of these items here. Identifying the package design inputs is obviously, so we rigorously looked at that. We looked at cost. We looked at package design. We wanted this would be, we had to maintain aseptic technique. It had to be a peelable seal. The materials had to be gamma stable. We were going to use existing tooling. A lot of basic design inputs. We wanted to mitigate corrosion. We needed to maintain sterility. So then what we set about to do, and I won't spend a lot of time on this, is we did a market search for commercially available high barrier films, and the supply side was great. We got a lot of information in a fairly quick amount of time relative to those films that could provide both high levels of moisture and oxygen barrier. We also, I'll just touch on this a little bit, we looked into the potential of using scavenger technology, also desiccant technology, and we felt like we weren't quite there on the scavenger technology piece, and on the desiccant technology, maybe some concern about adding an additional component, say a physical desiccant, into the package, though there may be other options to add desiccants, into the package design. So we amassed all our information on film. Additionally, because we knew we needed to have a package that we could actually machine, we worked with a form fill seal machine supplier and tried to understand all the issues of machinability relative to some of the films we were looking at. Formable foils, some Aclar films, and how they would mate with each other, the ability to make a very good package in a form fill seal configuration required some partnership with a machine supplier as well. What we then did is started to spreadsheet some of this information, put it into one big spreadsheet where, in addition to just permeation rates, we also had availability, cost, adhesive systems, and this machinability input piece. What we then looked at is, okay, now that we've amassed all this information on films, we then decided to verify some of the permeation data that we obtained from the suppliers on the flat sheet film. So using ASTM testing methodologies and experts in permeation testing. And what I'd recommend, I'm not going to list all the ASTM test methods you can look at, but a good reference, one number you can remember is ASTM F2097, which is really a kind of a design guide, but F2097 has a nice compendium of barrier test methods, ASTM test methods, that you look at to execute this permeation testing. So we did that and essentially able to verify the supplier data, but wanted to have that raw data for ourselves. Also looking at equilibration time too, that's something we wanted to look at. What we then did is kind of further refined our spreadsheet and selected films that we thought might make sense to actually bring to a machine trial. Because I'll jump forward a little bit here. What our goal from moving from a machine trial to actually make packages was to execute whole package testing. Okay, so this piece here obviously was preceded by the ability to machine the film. Something else we looked at, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, is modified atmosphere packaging. We looked at the fact that we wanted to be able to create the driest, most maybe oxygen-free environment we could find. So we did utilize the tools of nitrogen flushing to create these whole packages. So we then moved on to developing our whole package testing plan. And we kind of have two branches to this testing plan here. On the left side, we looked at conducting typical ASTM permeation testing for water, vapor, and oxygen through the ASTM test methods, and also a little more of a non-standard approach, so using some standardized techniques of conducting what I'm calling accelerated corrosion testing of the formed blister packages. And I'll get into that a little bit more a little bit later. We then, and I'm going to go through the process now and talk a little bit about the detail in the next slide or two. our next step in the process was something I'm calling permeation shelf life modeling. And I won't disclose all the information regarding the modeling technique, but we were able to take the input from primarily the whole package permeation testing with some other input regarding the interior environment of the package itself, and using a couple of subject matter experts actually develop models that could predict what the final oxygen and moisture content might be at the end of some defined period of time. So I'm going to move forward to the next slide, which will talk a little bit more about some of our testing plans. Okay, so as I mentioned, we verified our flat film permeation results from several selected films. We evaluated their machinability, and then we produced packages both for whole package permeation testing and whole package accelerated corrosion testing. On the whole package permeation testing piece, I mentioned we utilized some standard ASTM methods and some testing, permeation testing experts in order to evaluate the permeation into the package. So we're measuring the inside of the package, and we end up with a permeation rate of both oxygen and moisture in our case. Another method we used, kind of called a capture technology, a capture method using a vessel, is we're able to measure what is permeating out of the package. So, for example, if we had a modified atmosphere package, we're able to measure actually what comes out of the package. So we can, and this is a highly accurate method. So this is two ways of kind of understanding what's going on with the environment of the package. So that's permeation testing. For this whole package accelerated corrosion testing, here's where we took a little bit of art into the situation. What we looked at is so we have these whole packages. In this instance, we actually had, in the whole package permeation testing, the packages have no device inside them. In the whole package accelerated corrosion testing, we actually had a simulated high carbon steel component inside the package. So we set about researching an appropriate temperature and humidity to perform this accelerated corrosion testing. So what we did is set up an experiment where we would pull samples with the product inside and visibly evaluate the component inside the package for signs of corrosion. And in this particular instance, you can actually see kind of almost like a bloom. You can see visible elements of corrosion on the component if it's occurring. So I'll go on to the next slide here. So to develop this whole package accelerated corrosion testing, again, we've produced these packages. We've put our component inside the packages. We've actually created a modified atmosphere inside the package, and we have these high barrier materials. So we're looking to the kind of guide for accelerated aging per ASTM F1980, where we're using the Arrhenius equation at a thermodynamic model for performing this accelerated conditions testing. And basically this indicates that an increase in temperature will increase the rate of chemical reaction. What I wanted to point out here is that the equation has input for both the accelerated aging temperature and room temperature. Room temperature can range, I've seen it range anywhere from 20 to 25, and just know that that change in room temperature can affect this model as does the accelerated aging temperature. So just be careful when you select that you understand the effects of those inputs on the equation. I typically see about 22 to 23 degrees C used for room temperature. Okay, here's another excerpt from ASTM F1980, and again, we're using this accelerated aging model to kind of help us evaluate any potential physical property changes of the packaging materials and how they might affect our corrosion-prone product inside. So typically for packaging, the Q10 equals 2 model is used, indicating for every 10-degree rise in temperature, we're going to double the rate of the chemical reaction. This graph excerpted from F1980 indicates for a 1-year real-time equivalent, it'll just show you based on your accelerated temperature, say for example 50 C, 7.5 weeks at 50 C would equate to a 1-year real-time equivalent. Okay, again, looking to the F1980 guidance in the use of humidity with elevated temperatures, what I wanted to point out here is the idea of total moisture content at elevated temperatures. So if we look at room temperature, 23 degrees C, a relative humidity of 50% RH, which is very comfortable for most of us, that total moisture content in the air at those conditions is about 13,750 parts per million. As you increase your temperature, notice if to maintain that same amount of moisture in the air, the decline in relative humidity, meaning at 55 degrees C, if you programmed your environmental chamber at a 9% RH, you'd be creating the same total moisture content in the air that you have at room temperature in 50 degrees C. So we were mindful of that when we created our test conditions for our package, because to significantly increase that RH would have significantly increased also the total moisture content in the air, and would have created an environment that was really not found in nature and could be deleterious to the packaging material. Okay, so kind of moving on to some of our conclusions here. So again, just to recap, we in our testing scheme, we looked at both whole package permeation testing per some standardized ASTM test methodologies, sensor technology equipment, testing experts, and as you might imagine, because we hopefully did a good job of looking at high barrier moisture and oxygen materials, that whole package permeation testing did yield very promising permeation rates, meaning extremely low out to the second and third decimal point for oxygen and moisture with the correct units of measure. So our kind of task was, all right, how do we translate those low permeation rate information into a prediction of corrosion shelf life? How long is that going to give us before the product corrodes? And that's where we really relied upon our experts with their modeling techniques. The other piece that we looked at, which I was supporting with the ASTM F1980, is the whole package corrosion testing methodology. So we did determine that a modified atmosphere package was very helpful, that the lower the oxygen and moisture starting environments, obviously the better off we're going to be. However, in this particular instance, at conditions of, we used 50 degrees C and 25% RH, how I came up with that, or how the team came up with that, is we looked at that total moisture content generated as an equivalent to a Latin American warehousing situation. And what we did observe in our mapped packages was that we could actually see corrosion on this component in a little less than 50 days under these accelerated conditions. And the application of this Arrhenius equation, this accelerated corrosion testing, was we were trying to determine how that the passage of time may affect the barrier properties of the package. And it was very key to us that reasonable temperatures and humidities are necessary to really avoid damaging the package. And in retrospect, we may have even could have backed down, say, on the relative humidity that we selected. Okay. So I mentioned that part of the whole package testing, this whole package permeation testing, was to develop inputs that we could then potentially use or provide to our experts for modeling. And I really can't share any of the modeling techniques here. That's proprietary. But what I'd like to emphasize is these are what the required inputs are, and the modeling can be successful if you have the right inputs. So in our particular instance, for corrosion, obviously the two things we're typifying are moisture and oxygen. What you need to know to execute this modeling strategy is you need to quantify the volume of the package. You need to understand, and these two next points are key, is how much oxygen does it take to degrade your product? How much water does it take to degrade your product? And those, in a sense, really aren't easy questions to answer. And the model really is only going to be as good as the accuracy of those key pieces of information. Additionally, if you can quantify through measurement technologies, and there are experts in being able to determine this, is the starting concentration of moisture and oxygen in your package. That would be key. And then you also need the data, which we had, of course, for whole package transmission rate testing. So you understand how oxygen and moisture transmit in and out of your package. Okay. So on the modeling piece, I don't show it here, but we did. So we had this information, and we did utilize this information in the development of a permeation model. And we actually had two different models, kind of competing models, if you will, and they actually had somewhat opposing information. One model indicated that our package design could potentially be an insufficient barrier in order to achieve this long desired shelf life period, and another model indicated that we'd be able to easily achieve the desired 5-year shelf life. So again, I'm here to present that modeling is valuable, though we did actually get some conflicting information from two different modeling technologies. But they're extremely helpful in helping us, again, just continue to refine where we need to go with this particular package design, and maybe what steps need to take to be able to keep this product corrosion free. So we kind of went back to our design inputs. We also looked at auditing our film suppliers to make sure we'd have excellent partners in this whole process. Of course, we looked at costing. Where are we now? Are we going to be able to meet the target based on some of these high-performing films? Do we have the right tooling and equipment to proceed forward to implement this? And yes, we then need to spend time on developing a test plan for validation in compliance with ISO 11607 Part 1 and Part 2. Okay. Oops, go back one here. So lessons learned. There were several. I think we did do a fairly good job, but this would just be advice to everyone, is that really don't shortchange your design inputs definition. So and this is usually, there's many stakeholders. We needed to go back a couple times to several key stakeholders on the team to really challenge and understand what some of their inputs were, so that we could make the best decisions. I'd say in this particular project there was a huge focus on testing methodologies. I can't say that we had the absolute perfect testing methodologies. We learned some things, but understanding how to test packaging. One other idea I thought of is that perhaps we could place little portable hygrometers, if you will, data recorders that you could place inside the package, inside an environmental chamber, and actually measure, very accurately measure what's going on inside that package relative to, say, relative humidity. That could have been some useful information as well, maybe juxtaposed to some of the other permeation data that we've received. We want to resist the tendency to blast the package with temperature and humidity. Everyone's always trying to look for an answer fast, but I think in a sense, more real-time evaluation of the propensity to corrode may have been valuable. It's really key to partner with experts, both from a testing standpoint, experts in standardized testing. Maybe you're able to find folks that can model permeation and other attributes of packaging. You need some regulatory expertise to make sure that at the end of the day, the package is compliant with all the regulatory requirements that you need, both from a package standpoint and a product standpoint. And you need to understand equipment. We spent a fair amount of time working with equipment suppliers to make sure that films we selected, combinations of films we selected, would be able to be machined. It's just not an assumption that all films work together well. So we did get a lot of valuable information from our equipment suppliers. And then also project risk. What if we can't find a package that works? What other potential solutions can we bring into play from a packaging and maybe even a product standpoint that allow us to bring a product to commercial fruition? Also, a couple other lessons learned were on the modeling techniques. In retrospect, perhaps bring the modeling techniques earlier on in the process. I think that would have been helpful if we had done that a little bit sooner in the process flow than later. Maybe just made some assumptions about films and gathered the permeation data and done the modeling a little bit earlier on in the project. Also another, which probably most of you are aware of, are the smaller the volume package, the more challenging it is to provide a high degree of permeation barrier, because that high surface area to volume ratio really allows equilibration to the environment very quickly. So the smaller the package, the bigger the challenge. Again, I mentioned, having lessons learned is just really looking for the right resources. These are some resources at your disposal. These are all great groups, and we've actually reached out to most of them. So you may find subject matter experts within these different organizations and groups. So again, kind of recapping and summarizing is really defining what your project objective is. In this case, really the objective was, is it possible to maintain a corrosion-free product, defining your package design inputs, and really getting some team buy-in, and then really the package development process, I can't emphasize enough that we had a fairly good process. I would have changed a few things, but really mapping out the resources you need, and then defining those all up front, and kind of bringing everyone into a huddle, engaging those resources and expertise early was key, I think, and then really partnering with individuals and organizations that understand testing, both standardized testing and non-standardized testing. And then can people analyze the results? It's easy to generate data, but do you understand what that data means? So I think that was some of the key things that we learned on this project. So that's really all I have for today. And now I'm willing to take all your brilliant questions, which I hope I can answer somewhat intelligently. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Karen, for a great presentation. And before we get started, the first question a number of the attendees proposed is how they get a copy of your presentation. Is this something you'd be willing to send out to people?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, we'll make that available. The PowerPoint. If you email me, Jim George at jimg@iopp.org, and request a copy of the PowerPoint, I'll be happy to send it to you. So let's get right into the questions then. And Karen, let me start by asking you: were you hired as a corrosion expert or hired as something else?
Something else, yeah. No, I wasn't hired as a corrosion expert, and really as a packaging engineer who was willing to put some time into helping this particular client out.
Okay. Well, then, what did you learn about the mechanism of corrosion?
That there's probably not as much information as I thought there might be out there, and what I found out is the ability to predict how much corrosion can occur or when it can occur. It's just going to be somewhat unique to your particular product. It's an electrochemical process, and there is no standard answer for, okay, if you have this particular corrosion-prone component, how fast, if you just leave it out on the table, how fast will it corrode? I mean, it's all. It seems to me that it was all like empirically driven. Like we basically had to measure that we couldn't find an answer anywhere as to what to expect. So that was a little bit of part of the problem. We just couldn't find the raw data or the information to allow us to just land on that we had to really identify that and quantify that for ourselves.
Okay. And again, we invite those who are attending to type in their questions into the question field on your screen and submit them to us. And we've got some time here for some more questions, so please keep them coming. Karen, the next question is, in the course of your work here, what packaging materials did you evaluate?
Okay. Well, what I'll do is I'll kind of speak generically, because under some confidentiality, and I don't want to either plug or dissuade anybody from using materials. But what we found, maybe suffice it to say, the materials that seemed to hold the most promise in this particular application were foil lamination for the top. And why we chose that is we were looking for an opaque top structure, and we were looking for materials that had excellent sealant and peelable seal properties. And then for the bottom web, we kind of landed on an Aclar lamination, and Aclar is used heavily in the pharmaceutical industry as a moisture barrier. We did look at formable foils. We found for the bottom web piece, nylons and EVOH laminations may not have been optimal for our application. So we frankly looked at just about every formable bottom web that we could get our hands on, and frankly every top web. There was a bigger universe of top webs because they don't have to be extensible. They're a top web material. So there were some great materials out there. Got some great support from suppliers, but at the end of the day, we somewhat zeroed in on foil lamination top and Aclar lamination bottom.
Okay. Next question. Did the film suppliers give you a specification range, and was this taken into consideration in your testing?
They did. We did do the flat sheet permeation testing as a confirmation. It wasn't an issue of trust, but we just gained some, by doing the actual testing and having the raw data, we could look at time to equilibration and just have the raw permeation data on hand, which was helpful in some of our modeling. So yes, the suppliers had values they had obtained through ASTM testing methodology.
Okay. And in the lessons learned area, you mentioned to avoid testing for worst case scenario. So we're wondering that in your testing methodologies, how close is close enough to provide the best baseline information?
Let's see, I'm not sure I understand the question. Well, what I was mentioning about worst case conditions is, well, if you use the Arrhenius equation, that thermodynamic model to basically accelerate time, you can, as you increase in temperature, you can accelerate time. So you could, theoretically have a accelerated aging temperature of 100 degrees C, and condense, 5 years real time into some very brief accelerated aging period. But you'll be destroying the package, along the way. So what I'm meaning by that is, in some respects, real-time environmental exposure may have been the best way to evaluate the performance of this package, meaning non-accelerated conditions, because with the accelerated conditions, you are compromising things. So that's kind of what I meant, and but none of us can wait that long. We just can't wait real time. We can't wait 5 years. We can't even wait 1 year. So so we use these accelerated aging techniques to come up with some kind of approximation of a future event.
Okay, thanks. Here's another question. Did the nitrogen flush eliminate both air and water? If not, could you give an idea of the remaining amounts?
Yeah, we actually did measure oxygen, and I don't have the data off the top of my head, but we were able to do headspace analysis with one of our testing partners and some of their equipment. So for oxygen, yes, we were able to quantify that. We got pretty low. It was effective. It's a good tool. Somebody else suggested possibly the use of argon, which is a heavier element. It may even do a better job of flushing that package. Probably the key killer on this particular product was that it's a very small package, and as I mentioned, that high surface area to volume ratio may have somewhat mitigated the headspace, the mapping. Mapping is good, don't get me wrong, but when you got a very small package volume, the permeation gets exacerbated.
Okay. What company or person built the model for the permeation calculation? And I don't know that you can recommend a company per se, but maybe you could talk about some of the analytics and how you qualify a company.
Yeah, I probably would prefer not to discuss it. Maybe somebody can reach me in private regarding some of the suppliers on that. But basically, as I mentioned in the slide, some of the key inputs are defining your package volume for the modeling techniques, defining the package volume, defining the starting concentration of both moisture and oxygen, defining or measuring the transmission rate of oxygen and moisture into the whole package. And then the last two is really, and these are all inputs to the model, how much oxygen and how much moisture, in terms of concentration perhaps, does it take to degrade your product. So you need to have all those inputs defined in order to utilize these modeling techniques.
Okay. Another attendee asks, what was the total duration from initial films identification to the final decision making?
Good question. It was about 6 months. About 6 months worth of effort.
Okay. And were VCI materials considered, and is there any concern using this material with medical devices?
Repeat the question, Jim. Sorry, I didn't quite hear the first part.
Were VCI materials considered, and is there any concern in using this material with medical devices?
Let's see. I think VCI. I don't know if they could define that.
Yeah, it's not defined here.
I don't know if they mean.
Well, maybe we can come back to that. Let's try another one. A listener says they weren't clear if this is a form-fill seal or a thermoform fill seal package. Also, is this device now on the market, or what is the status? Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Hello?
Oh, hi folks,
Karen,
sorry about that. I'm back.
Okay, sorry about the delay here. Let me repeat the question here. Wasn't clear if this is a form-fill seal or thermoform fill seal package. So if you could clarify that, and also talk about, is this device now in the market, or what is the status of it?
Yeah, it is a flexible form-fill seal, so it's using your, it's not a preformed a package that you would purchase from a converter. So roll stock is purchased, and then kind of standard form-fill seal equipment is utilized. So it's a flexible form-fill seal, inline, form-fill seal equipment from one of your major suppliers. And at this point, the client is reviewing their package design options, so I don't believe it's on the market right now. Similar products are on the market, but this particular product is not on the market yet.
Okay. And I can't remember if you answered this one earlier, but what was the material you selected for the barrier?
Yeah, we're the manufacturer's looking strongly at a foil lamination with probably a polyethylene sealant, and then a bottom web of a flexible Aclar with a polyethylene sealant. So we're getting a PE to PE seal to get the peelability.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead, Jim.
Go ahead. Finish what you were saying.
Okay. You know, another kind of lesson learned too is that you probably want to create as thin a seal as possible, because you do get edge effects with permeation. So to the extent that perhaps you can thin gauge your sealant layers, that would be a desirable attribute to pursue too, is to have a very thin sealant layer created with the two substrates.
Okay. Yeah, in the course of going start to finish in the project, what was the longest step?
I would say actually the films research and film procurement. You know, not that any supplier was unwilling to sell us film, but there are always lead times in the manufacturing of the film. So I'd have to say that identifying the films, again, and not because they're not out there, but just making contact, reviewing the data sheets, and then once we wanted to produce films for a machine trial, actually waiting on the film production, which the suppliers were all very good. They expedited that, but there was some reasonable lead time in receiving the films.
Okay. And another question, Karen, was your strategy to view the test methods referenced in ASTM F-2097 and to pick those that were applicable? And if so, how did you determine which tests to conduct for both film and the whole package?
Yeah, well, primarily because we partnered with a permeation testing expert, and that organization, you know, really understands the testing methodology. So, really using experts in both permeation testing, equipment manufacture, and modeling. So they already were very familiar, and frankly were some of the authors of the test methodology. So that was very helpful for this particular project. That's how we were able to vet out the right ASTM test methods from 2097.
Okay. And then a good question here, was the model confirmed via a confirmation run?
No, not yet actually, because that would require actually some real-time aging. So that's a step that is yet to be executed.
Okay. Question, with all the high barrier materials used, how were you able to keep costs down, and what trade-offs were there?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. As one might imagine, the more high-performing films are your more expensive polymers. It's tough. You know, the more common polymers are not necessarily your highest performing in terms of barrier properties. That's not always the case, but that was an issue. Well, keeping the current manufacturer had a fairly cost-effective methodology in manufacturing and package design and configuration. So that was our key. We tried to stay. That was one of the design inputs, is to maintain the current package configuration, which had been optimized for cost. But it is a bit of a challenge on some of these high barrier films to keep the cost down.
Okay. And was there a concern of the package bursting if the project was airshipped?
Yeah, I think the client had previously done some low pressure, high altitude testing. The seal strength or seal area, maybe relative to the volume, was a pretty good ratio. So it was not an issue. Wasn't determined to be an issue.
Okay. And then getting back to the film, what was the gauge on the film used?
Most of the films, at least on the bottom web, about 8 mil thick, and for fairly shallow draw. But there is some ratio of permeation to the film thickness, so we didn't want to thin the film out too much.
Okay. And can you discuss at all the total cost of the package?
I'm actually I can't remember because we were looking a lot at kind of cost per pound. So I apologize, I don't have that number off the top of my head.
Okay. If the objective was a 5-year shelf life, how close, in the committee's opinion, did the modeling and test information come? If you can give a ballpark.
Well, in somewhat conflicting modeling information. One indicated that we weren't going to make it anywhere near close, and another indicated we might get 6 years. So I think two conflicting modeling results. I think some of our whole package accelerated testing may have been a little bit more promising, but it may be a challenge to reach that period. I think it may fall short of that.
Okay. And one final question here, Karen. Looking back, is there anything in this project you would have done differently?
Yeah, I did mention I may have looked at modeling much earlier on, because I think even though the modeling techniques are not perfect, it may have indicated, it may have set the expectations differently. So I would have done package permeation modeling maybe much earlier on in the process.
Okay. And then Karen, we have some more questions. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but if people want to reach you again to ask a question offline or to find out more about the Medical Device Packaging Technical Committee, where can they reach you again?
Okay, it's Karen, K-A-R-E-N, at lifepacktech.com, LIFEPACKTECH.com.
And again, for those of you still with us who want to download the PowerPoint slides, you can contact me, Jim George, and I'm at jimg@iopp.org. Just send me an email and I'll make sure you get the PowerPoint. So thanks to everybody for attending. This includes today's IOPP webinar and medical device packaging. I want to thank Karen Greene and the Medical Device Packaging Technical Committee, as well as our sponsor, Healthcare Packaging Magazine, for making this webinar possible. So thanks again to all for attending, and have a great day.
Thank you.